First, where did witch hunt come about? Well, it seems as though there's a political witch hunt that's going on in the country at the moment. And our conversation this morning is to be had with us by none other than Advocate Ndegwa Jiro, and he's here this morning. Good morning, Wakili.
Good morning.
How are you?
I've been well.
Explain yourself in terms of why we have not seen you for a while.
Well, we have been out in the trenches and joining other freedom fighters who are fighting to liberate this country and restore this country back to where we all aspire to be. So we are out there fighting.
Okay.
Bad governance. We are out there fighting a rogue regime. We are out there fighting a president whom, in my view, I equally agree with the Attorney General Emeritus Muturi that is unfit for that office. I have always held that view. We have discussed here several times. I have given my thinking and my support of the position that Mr. William Ruto is not fit to be the President of the Republic of Kenya. And there is nothing that can persuade me to hold any contra view.
Where?
If you look at the paper today, and I must thank the Standard that you're doing the Lord's work, and you are part and parcel of our comrades in the struggle. You are serious partners that are helping us change this country. So page 4 will tell you and will confirm what Mr. William Ruto is doing for this country.
What?
If we don't have the mechanisms of taking care of our country and making sure that William Ruto does not come back to power 2027, this country will go to dogs.
Well, nobody has to ask you what side you're on. And even
of course, I am on the side of the revolutionaries.
Okay.
Yes,
now,
there is no doubt about that. I am a freedom fighter.
Okay.
Yes.
Wakili, see, we have a proverb.
Yes.
CT will tell you which country he's in, and then you will interpret that proverb for us even as we go ahead into it. Sawa?
Yes.
Okay.
We are in the Republic of Zimbabwe. You know, their fight for independence was an interesting one because it was a two-pronged fight for independence. First, there was the UDI, Unilateral Declaration of Independence, by a gentleman called Ian Smith. Yes. And after Ian Smith had declared himself independent from Britain, he did attract some sanctions. But now the real push by the majority came in, and they wanted freedom.
Yes.
So this went on. The person who headed the party, ZANU, a gentleman by the name of Herbert Chitepo, was killed in a car bomb in Zambia. Now, most people don't know this.
The veterans.
Yes. And they do not know that Mugabe took over from him. He was more of a middle of the ground sort of like person. Mugabe was an extremist. He felt that there's no other way of getting this freedom other than by guerrilla warfare. And after Herbert Chitepo died, indeed, there was guerrilla warfare. And they did get independence. Unfortunately, that country, despite its immense wealth, has not benefited its people with the wealth it has.
It was mismanaged.
No. That country has been limping and teetering on the brink of collapse since.
Okay.
The details are another story. Now the proverb. Don't throw out the old pot until the tinker has made you a new one. Don't throw out the old pot until the tinker has made you a new one. A tinker is the person who knows how to make pots.
Yes.
Okay? That's the expert. That's the person you go to. Freedom fighter, how would you interpret this?
Well. Do not throw out the old pot until you get a new one.
Until you've had a new one made for you.
Yes, until
the key thing, it is made for you.
Until a new one is made for you.
Yes.
That is to mean that it can be interpreted in two ways, in my view. That it's not really enticing people for change, and it's not enticing people to jump into the pool from the deep end and find out what will happen. That is one way I can interpret the proverb. that it is not really encouraging the spirit of the revolution that we currently have, and that is being exhibited by the bold Standard paper with today's headlines and the subsequent and previous headlines that you have had. So my view and my interpretation of the proverb is that it's almost being initiated by a person who is telling us not to make attempts, not to go and conquer new worlds, that we should remain in our comfort zone.
Okay.
Yeah. So to me, the proverb today is not in line with the spirit of the Standard paper.
I like your interpretation. It's a lovely revolutionary interpretation.
It had to be.
But it has to be just that, an interpretation.
Yeah. Essentially. So, I mean, there's a lot going on.
Yes.
My goodness, it seems like it's a bit of a roller coaster. You wake up every morning and there's something new.
Yeah.
Of impeachments, and then thereafter of sackings, of dethroning of individuals here and there. You seem to believe that there is a political witch hunt going on.
Well, I would not just settle on the question of witch hunt. My view, all what is happening and why the country finds itself in a roller coaster, as you say, is because the affairs of this country have been, there is serious mismanagement of the affairs of this country. The political affairs, the social affairs, and the economic affairs. That is why you can see the country is just spinning and spinning and spinning. So to me, it's not a witch hunt. Any person who holds a contra view from the status quo is dealt with, because the current government has said that we should remain with the old pot, that we should just stay in our comfort zone, we should not critique, we should just assume that things are okay, that we should not even have the spirit and the freedom of conscience, like what is happening to the Butere girls this morning and what is happening to Senator Malala this morning, that we should not even have the right of expression, that even the right to the freedom of the media, as it was exhibited last night, is, we are being told that to kai hivyo.
When in the history of this country have we not been told to kai hivyo? When?
Well, many a times we have been told to kai hivyo, either directly or that is expressly or impliedly. But with the events of last year, June 2024, the 25th of June, I think the country took some different directions, political, social, and even religious directions. And economic directions. So people have now decided we are going to break away from the past. And you can see the push that is actually being initiated. Not from actually the people that we are accustomed to, but from a very different demographics of individuals whom people never thought would actually be where they are today. The biggest problem Mr. William Ruto did with his mismanagement of the country is that he has awoken our consciousness.
Is that a mistake?
Yes, he did.
How?
Because if he had not mismanaged this country, the people would not have arisen.
So the waking up of the citizenry and their conscience is a mistake?
I'm saying the mistake William Ruto did. Yes, that we are now conscious.
Well, that is the question I'm asking.
It's a good mistake, no?
Yes, it is a good mistake.
Okay.
It's a very positive mistake. Yes, a very good mistake that he did. Then I would then perhaps rephrase and say the best thing that William Ruto did is to awaken our consciousness. Yes.
So,
and you can see the consciousness actually is even being exhibited in very high levels of drama. Yeah, that's a good thing that he did. Yeah.
So you are actually admitting that there is some good that William Ruto has done?
Yes, awakening our consciousness. That is something that he has done. Had it not been for this mismanagement, Kenyans would not be as revolutionary as they are this morning. Yes.
But we talk about a mismanagement that we attribute to William Ruto, but the person you really support, even defended in court, was part of that government as well. Does he equally take responsibility as being part of the mismanagement that you talk about today?
You know, before Saul became Paul, he had all the blames of persecuting the children of Israel.
Which he did.
And we blamed
He did it efficiently
properly.
and
Yes.
effectively.
And the blame was up the day he was Saul. When he became Paul, he started preaching the gospel, and people embraced him.
Oh,
So, but should
Yes.
Saul as well take responsibility for his misdeeds?
And then, he has actually even owned up, and he has even apologized to Kenyans. But what William Ruto did when he was contesting for presidency, it was very easy for him to convince any other person.
Why?
And I don't blame him.
Why? Why was it easy?
If you could remember what His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta did and mentioned, he said, mdomo tamtam, mdomo tamtam, mdomo tamtam. Hiyo mdomo tamtam ili convince watu wengi sana. So we don't blame Kenyans for that.
So, just wait. The mdomo tamutamu, was it Uhuru's mdomo tamutamu?
No. He was referring to this political fraudster, William Ruto.
This was Uhuru.
This was Uhuru
He said it.
saying, na munadanganywa na mdomo tamtam,
Yeah,
mdomo
but
tamtam, mdomo
Uhuru
tamtam.
himself is a very smooth talker. So, tongue in cheek, what exactly?
This one is not just a smooth talker. This is a political fraudster.
At what point does a politician become somebody who is convincing, and somebody who is
somebody who's telling the truth.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Or at what point does the presentation of a politician become something that is credible, and at what point does it become fraudulent?
Yes, that's a good question, CT. And that is why I am out advocating for a very unique way of analyzing our leaders. That is not enough for us just to have a new constitution. It's not enough for us to have good laws. It is important for us to analyze the character of a president. Let me give you a small example. When Kibaki took over power, he reigned with the same constitution Kenyatta reigned with.
And Moi did.
1963, and
Yes.
Moi did.
Yes.
The atrocities that were committed by Kenyatta, they were committed, or the goods that he did, he did it under the 1963 constitutional dispensation. Equally for President Moi, he did it through that particular instrument. But when Kibaki came, Kibaki won, he still used the same document. But you can see the kind of the revolution that came in the country. There was freedom of democracy, freedom of speech, the media houses expanded, the economy expanded. Why? Because it was not just the law, even the character of an individual matters. So post 1963 comes 2010 constitution. We all thought that the country is now stable. We have a new constitutional dispensation. The law is so clear. So we said, we have one of the progressive constitution in the world. But let me ask you, when Kibaki was Kibaki in 2002 and up to 2013, and when he had the 1963 constitution, we did not have the atrocities that are now being committed with a new progressive constitution. So the character of an individual matters most.
But Ndegwa, it seems that though intentionally you choose to not speak of the entire Kibaki system. Because
Yes.
if you come to 2007 as well,
Yes.
there is that debate on Kibaki responsibilities post 2007.
Yes.
So as much as he had good parts of his reign, there is also the other side
Absolutely.
that we equally must talk about.
I am very conscious that there is no one who can claim infallibility. I am so conscious of that fact. And I did not say that Kibaki was an angel. I only said that he was able to govern the country with a constitution that was supposedly bad, a constitution that had been abused by two previous regimes. But because of his character, he was able to at least lift the country, place it on a runway.
It would appear,
And the country was ready for takeoff.
Waki, it would appear as though we seem to shroud ourselves in pretense a lot. When it comes to the political scene, when
That
it
is
comes
true.
to governance, we seem to be able to point the finger.
Yeah.
But when we are in these positions, we don't say anything. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday. I said, you know what, this is really difficult. He said, you know what, think about it. When you're in a private organization and somebody is accused of doing something when they have left.
Yes.
They knew the rot that was happening, but they couldn't speak about it while they were in there. But then they suddenly find their wings to fly when they're out.
Outside there.
Is that the same thing that we see? Because one would imagine that some of the things which we are ascribing to political witch hunt today is coming from individuals who, some of which you supported.
Yes.
Who could have said, when you see 1 wrong, 2, 3,
Yes.
4, 5 happening, that you would actually, being a person of good repute, sit up and say, hey, this is the way the country is going, we don't like it.
What we are currently gathering is that, and I would take the example of His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua. And I know you'll soon ask me, I now currently refer to him as His Excellency.
Yes,
I was,
but it's appropriate.
I know.
It is
you-
appropriate.
Okay, all right.
Even if you're
then-
an
then-
immediate former deputy president, you are still his excellency.
then if we are in agreement,
No,
therefore
no,
I continue.
I'm in agreement with you.
and while you do that, you can also tell us then if he was then a victim of this witch hunt that we speak
Well,
of.
yeah. So my opinion in that respect is that these two gentlemen, the Attorney General Emeritus and His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, they have come out in public and told us that even when they were inside, they were resisting. They were still resisting some of this corruption and thuggery of Mr. William Ruto. For example, I am dealing with the Adani's case, and we were in court on Tuesday. So when we filed this Adani's case, the Attorney General, as he then was C.S. Muturi, Attorney General Emeritus. We filed the petition. They were supposed to respond. What they did is that they responded with just mere denials. So the court pushed them and asked them that they must give and lay bare their case as to the status of the Adani deal. They brought an agreement in court that had not been attested or executed by the Attorney General. And remember, the Attorney General, as at then, was C.S. Muturi. So we can see that he was fighting from within. And that is what people keep on saying, that before you throw in the towel, you can try to change issues from within. We've also had Wamunyoro still indicating how he resisted and how he fought from within before the person whom he was fighting from within decided to make sure that he gets rid of him. So what that tells you is that Mr. William Ruto is not ready to take advice even from the people that he himself has appointed. And at times, if you try to change things from within and you make no progress, then you get out and change from without. Yes. So to me, if I was to answer the question of witch hunt, yes, Mr. William Ruto will witch hunt any person who does not speak his language, any person who does not dance to his tune, and any person who refuses to become party to the prey. Yeah.
Bonanjiru,
Yes, it is.
in the history of this country, when have we seen political leaders or presidents having in their government people who are known specifically for their contrarian views or the wishes of the president? When?
I want to take it that we are living in a new era of information.
The Kenyans who are living in this new era aware that they need to be they themselves new in this new era, or have we come with our old habits into the new era?
Of course, there's a generation, your generation, our parents' generation.
How old do you think I am? Go on.
You're old enough not to be a millennial, and you're old enough not to be a Gen Z.
Hey, man, this guy's always making me prehistoric. Yes.
You're old enough not to be a millennial, and old enough not to be a Gen Z.
Please continue.
So CT, the new information, the era of information, and this is not the first time it happens in the world. And if you look at the times of Aristotle and the Kina Plato, there came an era they were calling the era of enlightenment. You remember?
Yes.
The era of enlightenment.
In fact, in France, they call it the period of Renaissance. The rebirth.
They call it the period of resonance.
Yes.
And it's the period of the resonance that we had the ousting of King Louis the 16th, if you remember. So history is actually repeating itself. that we are now, the era that we are now living in, the era of enlightenment, it has so much opened and expanded our minds that we are now saying that we deserve to be called, we deserve to have the right place in God's kingdom. We do not deserve to be treated as if we serve a lesser God. And that is why the Gen Zs are saying and the millennials, and now even your generation and the entire country, that it's time of change or not.
My generation were sat on effectively and efficiently, and a few people raised their voices then.
Yes.
A few stuck out their necks, and that was a dangerous time to do so.
Yes.
An extremely dangerous time to do so.
I cannot just simply sit here and say that whatever we are currently experiencing is entirely owned up by the millennials and the Gen Zs. No, it's a build-up. Even your generation made a lot of contributions.
We did.
For a lot of it.
We did.
Had it not been for your generation and the generation past
before us,
before you, would not be where we are. Would never had multi-party democracy. Would never had the new constitution, because it's the new constitution that we have Article 37. None of the Gen Zs and none of the majority of the millennials fought for the placement of that article. It is your generation. Yes. So this is a joint venture. It's a political joint venture that is owned up by the entire generation. Each generation had its part of contribution.
But you know how this?
So we also owe it to you.
This is how these things actually work. But I think we're going to go into a break here.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
So I'll wait until we come out of the break.
Hold that thought. Don't forget it. We're going to come back.
Thought, yeah.
Wakili Njiru Ndegwa is our guest this hour, and we're looking at, of the platform upon which we are today. There are, according to you, political witch hunts. There are witch hunts going on, and there is an the current status quo. We'll continue looking to some of these things as we also keep an eye on other things that are happening currently in the country. It's 8:30 on the nose. Kenya's biggest conversation comes back right after this break. Don't go away.
Usiwe watu ambao watadanganywa na siasa ya pesa nane. Tunataka Wakenya wawe kitu kimoja. Na tunataka hii nchi iweze kuendelea na yale maendeleo ambayo yako. Kuacha spidi nyingi na kujua ya kwamba kazi na ukweli washinda matusi na chuki. Hata hawa wengine ni wetu, lakini inaonekana they need time ya kutulia.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. The weather with Spice FM.
Where would one find the smallest bone in the human body?
Stick tu kwa kita, utaki kufia ingine.
Time imeisha. Hey! 30 seconds starts now.
Nimeongelesha? Ni wewe naongelesha ndugu. Mimi nilikuwa nafikiria ni kuimba unaimba. Ni kuimba kweli naimba, lakini nakuuliza tena kazi iko waje?
Wewe ni nani na unabeba hapa kama nani wewe?
Hii ni stage na si ya mtu.
Toka hapa.
Toka hapa. Toka hapa. Wewe achana wewe. Ama utafanya nini?
You dears. My hostess.
Yeah, Jezebel. Kumbe unaitwa you dears.
Unaniaibisha mbele ya my family severally.
Several times.
550 only. No, you have been a good person to me. Lazima nikuongeze ka kitu bana.
Uko shulling. Wewe lipa gari.
Unataka how much?
50,000. Unataka donate?
I did it. Munanipeleka madhara ndio mali yangu kule vile mnataka. Kuna mnadanganya ati this for my own good.
Ndiwe ulimaliza maji kwa fridge, ukarudisha kibuyu bila maji.
Serious. Unanipigia hizo madrama nikiwa job.
Wewe anjalipa gari.
Unataka kulipa?
Unafaa nikuitie polisi wewe. Nonsense. Toka hapa.
our guest this hour
Yes,
and
yes.
looking at some of these things. And it's interesting because as the last, couple of weeks, we've had these conversations. It's gone round and round and say, okay, things don't look really pretty. And folks have said we're hurtling into the abyss of, total anarchy, and people have been as sensational as saying that.
Yeah.
Is it that bad, or are we still trying to find our steps in terms of what is happening? There are opinions, there is truth and fact.
Yeah.
But, and then also there's, like you said, there's character. If you want to do a comparison this morning, we had a conversation earlier on where we said, you know what does Donald Trump want to do? And I said, you cannot separate the character of an individual, regardless of what position they are in. Their character is going to bleed into that position.
Yes.
So are we dealing with just a character issue, or are we dealing with this is actually where a nation will go if we are not careful?
We are in a situation where if we are not careful, that the country will take a nosedive, and we may never regain and reclaim this country. Because the kind of the weaponization that is taking place, courtesy of the system and courtesy of the regime, is that the regime has decided that they want to mutilate all the gains that we have gained, that we have achieved, political gains, economic gains, and the social gains. The regime has decided that even those sacred institutions that we thought would never be involved in running the affairs of this country, for example, the military, the police, the regime has decided that they are going to use them. The regime has decided that we are now going to start introducing militarization of our politics slowly by slowly.
How exactly?
How exactly is that, CT? When you see the CDF coming out from the barracks and engaging himself actively in a political process, when you see...
Wait, what political process was this again?
Well, they came out and made some very devastating political statements.
They did?
Yes, that we people should not say that Ruto must go.
Where did they say this?
Well, I think is it called what is it, CDF and NIS guy?
It's called Director General.
Director General.
Yes.
And also the Inspector General. When you see them taking active positions in politics, you realize
how is a lecture, because it was a lecture on the changing landscape of Kenyan intelligence.
Yes.
It was a lecture at the Kenya Intelligence and Research University.
Yes.
A public lecture.
Yes.
How is that political?
It was a skewed one.
How?
The statement, the paraphrasing of the theme was meant to entice and to conceal the underlying undertones.
Which was
that they were actually meant to come and scare and intimidate people. Otherwise, just on one thing. Otherwise, where did the question of the undertone of Ruto must go find itself in the theme?
Do you believe that you honestly, as you speak here,
yes,
have the proper context of what the CDF said in that lecture?
Of course, I never attended the lecture, to be honest. I read what was reported partly by the Standard, which is a bold reporter, and a paper that we believe cannot mislead the revolution, and equally the others. So if I read anything, and these days, by the way, we are not buying any other newspaper.
Okay,
we are buying the Standard. It is our darling. Even when the advertisement was withdrawn by the rogue regime, I was one of those guys who said we must come out and support the Standard. The Standard is a revolutionary newspaper. So when the Standard reports, I have no doubts. I believe what the Standard has told me. For example, if the Standard says it's a house of deals, I absolutely have no reason to doubt.
In this case, the Standard had a headline.
Yes.
Other papers carried the story.
Yes.
And that particular function was open to all media houses. They were invited.
Yes.
And among the people who spoke were the two individuals you've mentioned, but also the president of the Law Society and the AG. They also spoke.
Yes.
The context that the Ruto must go phrase came in was actually meant in the complete opposite of what you have been led to believe.
Yes.
The example that was being given was the freedoms that people have, and the example was, in order that you can even say Ruto must go, what the CDF said, and I was there, so for me it's not someone told me, I was there. Everything that we do, because he was aligning it with their role as the military, is within the constitution. Yes, he said, you can say Ruto must go, but it must be done constitutionally. That is what he said.
Yeah, of course, that's what he said.
Yes.
But I do not know who told the CDF that we, the revolutionaries, that we, the freedom fighters, have any intentions of doing it extra constitutionally.
But
so he needed not to caution us, because we are aware, even in our rallies, we are saying, we are speaking of 2027. So who told him that we were ready to get Ruto to go before 2027?
Bonanjiro, the citizens of this country don't have a monopoly on the intelligence of what happens.
Yes.
That's why we have organs.
Neither are those organs have or in possession of the monopoly.
Okay, I need to connect this here, because if it's coming off of what you were saying, Jiro, is that if we have such public statements, subliminal or otherwise, is that pointing to what you're saying, the direction in which we are going?
Yes.
Whereby if freedom of speech is curtailed,
it's being curtailed.
Freedom of expression is curtailed.
Conscious.
And this is coming from the position of the executive.
Yes.
Then we have a problem?
We got a big problem. When you see the IG of police, akiwa huko Nyeri, saying that, mnataka Ruto aendelee, umefurahi kuona rais. You know, it tells you where Mr. William Ruto is taking this country.
Who appointed this person?
William Ruto.
Yeah.
Yes, and his regime.
Now tell me something.
He's serving the interests of William Ruto.
So if he's serving the interests of William Ruto, as you say, so you're saying his pronouncements were amounted to him serving the interests of William Ruto?
And they were equally unconstitutional. They were equally unconstitutional. Because the IG ought to protect both the persons who agrees with William Ruto and those who don't agree with William Ruto. For example, how do you explain that the state has no intelligence that His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua was to visit Mweki? And how comes that there were not even police within? And by the way, I don't know whether you know where the church is. Where the Mweki PCA church is.
The police station is located, not very far away.
The police station is just about 200 meters from where it is, from where the church is. How comes that the OCS in that particular police station was oblivious, and he was even so blind and so deaf that he could not even hear that was coming?
Are you suggesting that William Ruto and the government of William Ruto were behind the attack on that church?
Oh, certainly. How do you explain the absence of the police 200 meters away?
When the president had a tour of Nairobi,
yes,
and hooligans were robbing people,
yes,
in the streets,
yes.
So these hooligans, were they also sponsored by William Ruto?
They say, show me your friends, and I'll tell you who you are.
Yes.
Mr. William Ruto was and is the owner of those so-called hooligans.
The ones who are robbing people in Nairobi?
Yes.
And you have evidence to support this?
He knows them.
And you have evidence to support this view?
Yes, I have it. Do you know why? Since that time, William Ruto has not even apologized to Kenyans. To us Kenyans, even the people who were actually robbed.
What was the? Oh, okay, right. During his Nairobi tours.
Yeah, and even when he made an address at Nyeri State Lodge, he steered away from that topic.
I want to understand why this apology was supposed to be forthcoming. What was it for?
Can I jump on that? If he were to apologize, would it then disabuse him from the position that maybe he had something to do with it?
You know, if you look at what happens in Germany, almost every chancellor who comes apologizes for the Holocaust.
For the Holocaust, yeah.
Everybody. No, not that even the chancellor is the one who was there during that particular time of the Holocaust, but they feel obliged to continuously tender their apology.
Why do they apologize in Bonanjiro?
Of course, for the things that were done and the atrocities that were done.
The German people committed atrocities. Yes. The German government committed atrocities. The Germans went forth to even apologize to the Namibians.
Yes, they did.
They did. And they even gave money.
They did for reparation.
It is the only country where the leaders have come out and apologized.
Yes, and they have owned up.
Yes. They have.
They have owned up.
They've taken it even further. The structure of the government that they have makes it impossible, and the way the politics run, for those whom we refer to as nationalists or extremists to actually rule. In fact, they will fight against it. Why? Their lived experience with one party dominating is still fresh in their minds. But why is it so? It is taught.
Yes. It's taught in school.
It is an examinable subject in their schools.
What extremism can do and how extremism can affect the fate of a nation and a generation. So why am I giving an example of the Germans and the apology they always tender? Is that they do it voluntarily because they knew mistakes were done. They are not; those are not actually the generation that is currently apologizing. Is not the one that committed them.
You know what I hear you to be saying is that President William Ruto has a monopoly on gunnery, the ever-growing enterprise of goons. So does he own a monopoly of goons in the country? That's really what I hear you to be saying.
You know, that again takes me back to the character of an individual.
Yes.
And you know, you cannot bury history. YK92.
Yes.
What was the mantra of YK92? Was it just goonism? Was he associated with the YK92? And remember, YK92 was the Caesarean section that delivered William Ruto into Kenyan politics.
Yes.
It is that YK92 that brought him into
was the birth process.
It was a birth process. It was a Syrian process, that political process that gave birth to the current William Ruto. So what was the premises of YK92? Meting out violence against any KANU dissident.
And are you saying that you see the same thing today?
Oh,
yes. If there is, Wakili, a contrary opinion, a contrary expression to the manner, not the individual, to the manner in which governance is being rolled out in the country, we're saying that there seems to be a way in which that will be stopped. Is that now becoming the MO?
Yeah, you know, the tragedy in this country is that we have not addressed our past mistakes like the way the Germans have addressed it. We have refused to own up. For example, I'll give you a very simple example. You will not peruse 2 or 3 reports. If you peruse the Akiumi report, you'll find the name of William Ruto in the Akiumi report. If you peruse the Kligra report, you'll find his name there. If you peruse the Waki report, you'll find his name there. If you peruse the TGRC report, you'll find his name there. But we have refused. When we had the opportunity to implement these reports and the recommendations, we have completely steered away. Let me give you an example.
Who was in power when all these documents were written, and what prevented them from actually applying them?
The political gimmicks, the political undertones.
Who were the presidents?
One, Kibaki was in power.
And then Uhuru Kenyatta.
Equally, Uhuru was in power. Moi was in power during the Akiumi report.
Yes.
But you see, we do not have the political goodwill. That's why I'm saying, and the reason why some of those presidents would not implement this Akiumi report is because you'd also find their names in it, printed in it.
You see, the point you make is a valid one.
Yes.
Whenever something is wrong, it must be pointed out.
It must and corrected.
And yes, the correcting bit is what, as you say correctly, we have failed to do over time.
Absolutely.
We bring about the changes, but the follow-up that is necessary, the vigilance that is necessary is lacking. So then we find ourselves in a position where what we are doing is complaining and whining, and yet we've always had the opportunity to bring about the change. Simple. Holding leaders to account. Must something get to the point where it is so terrible? That's when you start talking about how bad the person is. And yet, what we are seeing is like an ailment that is throughout the system of the country.
Yes.
Whether it is MCAs, whether it is MPs, whether it is governors, whether it is senators.
Yeah.
People whom we actually elect to help bring about this change.
You are so right.
And allow me to... go ahead, Dennis.
And you see, as well as we talk about that, we talk about the change that we need.
Yeah.
The responsibility squarely lies on the citizenry of the Republic.
Yes.
It is us who every electioneering period go to elect these people, despite the reports that you talk about.
Yes.
Now, here we are talking about the change that we need, but you're not telling the citizenry on the need for them to make the right choices.
We have been out there advocating for that change that you're now speaking about, and the ability of the citizenry to exercise their voting and the election of their leaders with conscience and a bit of enlightenment. We have consistently failed because the generation that has been instrumental in putting government into place has been a generation that was largely disadvantaged.
Okay.
For example, if you speak about the generation of my dad, who is still a voter to date, it was largely disadvantaged by colonialism. It was largely disadvantaged by the inability to be enlightened. It was largely disadvantaged by the whole idea of fanatism in the region. Now, post our dad comes another generation now. It was disadvantaged by the misrule of Kenyatta and Moi, to the extent that the majority of them did not even go to school. The majority of them did not even have the basic needs. Now, past that generation again come to the generation of Kibaki. That is where at least Kibaki started lighting the light. And lighting the light of what we can currently see. The effects of today's agitation and the effects of today's revolution, and the reason why the finance bill was brought down by a generation that we never thought that would ever arise, was because of Kibaki took that generation to the 7th century age of enlightenment. He took them to school, he took them to university, he took them to secondary school, and that is now the generation that has now brought rationalism and imperialism in our politics. And that is now calling us to order. Remember, they have said, if CT does not toe the line, they will take his ID and he will not vote. Why? Because they highly suspect that CT's generation will vote in the traditional manner without exercising their faculties into full engagement in the exercise they are taking. That is what they have said. So that is not a small threat. It's a threat that we need to think about.
Okay.
That this is a generation that is now decided to call the country to order. And we cannot see that something that just came up. It is something that was prepared.
You see, but
the way the Mswahili says, ukiona vyaelea, ujue vimeundwa.
You see, the thing that you hear me speaking of is actually revisionism.
Yes.
Where when we revisit our history and what happens, we are selective in how it is we represent it.
Absolutely.
The governments are a continuum.
Yes. They are perpetual.
Yes. Kibaki did things that no other president had done.
Yes.
But you cannot move away from the fact that the president who built the schools as we know them in their numbers was Moi.
Yeah, he did.
You see, but credit is not given.
The Harambes that that gentleman did.
Schools that were built
enormous.
and built and built.
Oh yes, the DEB's schools.
Yes, the movement from one university to multiple universities.
Absolutely.
Which enabled Kenya to have the human resource that it actually has.
Yes.
Now, this having been said, we talk about the role of the citizenry and what they must do.
Yeah.
How they must do it, sometimes we don't know how.
Yes.
Because the responsibility is enshrined in the Constitution because we are the sovereign.
Absolutely.
How do we ensure that we are vigilant and we keep our leaders in check? Because in the absence of that, if we do what my generation, the ones before, have done, you achieve something, you sit back.
No.
You achieve something, you sit back.
Yes. When we gave unto ourselves the new constitution, we created in it institutions that were supposed to complement the other democratic processes. And we agreed that this institution would be so much important in lining up our democracy in the direction in which we wanted to take. For example, we came up with a commission like the Commission on Administrative Justice, the Ombudsman. We came up with an institution like that of the Auditor General that's supposed to audit our books. But when the Auditor General audits our books, the next thing that happens, the political class that feels disadvantaged by the exposé goes and attacks that Auditor General and puts up mechanism for removal of that Auditor General. When the Controller of Budget says that this budget cannot be expended this way, the next thing we see is that she's being rushed to Mombasa and being charged with fictitious claims. When we want to have a judiciary that is functional. The next thing we see is that all of a sudden somebody is so much discontented and dissatisfied with the entire of the Supreme Court. So there has always been strategic political manipulation of our institutions. And these institutions are the ones that are supposed now to climatize our democracy and protect.
When Maraga nullified the elections.
You know, that was a reckless statement made. I would not say that was a statement that ought to have been directed towards our democratic institutions.
Okay.
Because what it did, it mutilated the integrity and the social standing of that particular institution. And that is a statement that is being followed today. That statement of we shall revisit is the one that is currently being followed and being pursued with the current petitions that are seeking to remove the entire bench.
Right. And that comes into play.
So leaders must have responsibility even in their pronouncements. And that is not unique because, before you ask me that question, the Constitution has contemplated such kind of scenarios. And under Chapter 6 of our Constitution, we are supposed to hold leaders to account. But unfortunately, because of the political expediency, somebody will go to the state lodge and recklessly say that I removed this person from office because he was asking for a bribe of 10 billion. And then you just let it go. No action is taken yet. In the constitutional dispensation that we have, Parliament, which is created to offer oversight over the executive, is supposed to hold with Mr. William Ruto to account. For example, if we had a functional parliament today, the next thing that we would be seeing in Parliament is a petition for removal of Mr. William Ruto, an impeachment motion, asking him, how do you turn a sacred institution into a house of thieves and den of thieves? That is the kind of the political accountability, transparency that our constitution contemplated. But unfortunately, because Mr. William Ruto knows and understands, it's not possible for him to survive in the midst of independent institutions. Due to his character, he has to mutilate those independence.
So here we are talking about a situation where Parliament, House of Parliament, according to you, the judiciary, the executive itself walking on its own legs, you're saying that these institutions essentially are being used to perpetuate a single character narrative of the president?
Absolutely. They are being held hostage. And that's any institution that is not playing to the tune of Mr. William Ruto is witch-hunted, is hoarded out of office. Not just an institution, even individuals who do not play to the tune of Mr. William Ruto. The entrenchment of dictatorship in this country, the entrenchment of the mutilation of the rule of law, the killing of the spirit of our constitutionalism is hoarded out of office. That is the tragedy and the cancerous situation we are dealing with in this country.
How do we get away from that?
We get away from it by, first of all, having such kind of bold headlines, informing the people, the citizenry. In 17th century, City will agree with me, the age of enlightenment.
You're determined that I must really be old. City will remember. I was alive in the 17th century.
Let's go with it. Okay,
let's go with it. I was alive in the 17th century.
Yes. Of course, I'm trying to tap and plug into your knowledge. I'm plugging into your knowledge. I'm actually provoking
Please
it.
Go on.
The age of enlightenment did not just come.
No, it didn't.
It came with their being of Plato. It came there with their being of Aristotle. It came there with their being of Thomas of Aquinas. You know, they are the ones who brought forth the age of enlightenment.
And then the era where now writing, publishing,
began.
Yes.
Yes.
And and the resistance that it had, but what it then did to the proliferation of knowledge.
Yes. And how does then that bring solution-oriented citizenship, for example?
With the proliferation of knowledge, King Louis XVI was overthrown by the People's Revolution. So you cannot just underestimate what is happening. And the people and the sovereignty of the people was exercised as at that time. Remember what brought down King Louis XVI was the extravagancy of the monarch, as it is happening today.
The revolutionary mind, though, Mwananjiru, if you remember, came via the American War of Independence.
Yes.
People came back from
the Civil War, the American Civil War.
Yes. And when they came back, they realized we were helping some people fight for their freedom, and yet we have a problem.
We are oppressed.
Same thing happened to us. when Kenyans went to the First World
Yes.
and Second World War, rather,
Absolutely.
and came back and said, wait a
Yes,
moment.
yes.
Yes.
So they went out there, interacted with information. They realized that you could hold a gun and a gun could shoot a white man, and they realized you can still use it. That age of enlightenment is with us today. We are in possession of that age, and that age of enlightenment is a toxic age to any person who want to maintain the status quo. Any person who want to maintain the status quo will be trampled down by this age of enlightenment. They should not think that Kenyans are silent. Look at what is happening just in the social media peke yake. Look at how people have been able to demystify William Ruto to the extent that he has so been demystified that even people will not even use the term His Excellency on him. And for the period I have been here, I have not applied that terminology on him because he has been demystified. People have realized he's a mortal man. People have realized that a mortal man can just be clothed with glory of His Excellency titles and mismanages the country and hides behind the glory of His Excellency, hide behind the glory of State House. We have now demystified that.
And a renaissance such that happened in the 20th century probably is happening.